All right, guys. So you may or may not have seen a video I made last year talking about the best comics on the convention circuit. Straight up, a lot of these were like P.O. Box submissions. Some of these were books that I found out and about at places like Heroes Con, which I'm attending this weekend as we record this. But there was one book that just really, really impressed me, and it was called Scion. And it's about this kid who like wants to be a detective, but he goes for this eye surgery, and just like his world gets opened in some crazy ways after this surgery. And issue one was really dope. I really loved one, just how much time was dedicated to the world building and all the things, right? And so this is supposed to just be an intro to the podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on the creative team behind this book. Welcome, Mr. Mark Bandy and Shay the artist. How are you guys?
Doing well. Thank you for having us on. It feels great to be here. It feels like a long time coming, but honestly, it feels really good. I'm glad. Thank you for having us.
Truly, very, very happy to be here. I'm glad you brought us on.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. And for what it's worth, the microphone sounds great. We had a fun pre-show, and now here we are. But so, Mark, I guess I want to start with you. I know a lot of times with these indie comics, the book starts with the writer, as opposed to, say, an editor or even sometimes the artist. I guess an artist could come up with a story. But a lot of times with this, it's like, okay, a writer has a story, then they go find an artist, and then they work together to bring this, into fruition. So I wanted to talk a little bit about just sort of backstory, even before we get to Scion, just what brought you into comics.
So I can't lie. I was given comics honestly. My dad is a nerd, true and true. I definitely got my nerd genetics from him, honest. But also on my mom's side of the family, my grandfather, Manuel, my great grandfather, he is a very, very big nerd. He collected a lot during the Silver Age, and he kept like a big box of like all of his favorite comics whenever he was a kid, like up on like the top shelf of like his like in his laundry room. And like it was pretty much me kind of like having to fight to be a nerd when I was younger. I'm gonna be honest. I'm from a really small area in the South. I'm from Woodworth, Louisiana. I usually would claim Alexandria, but I grew up in the little suburb outside of town, right? It was a village when I was born, right? I think about 1,200 people, around 2,000 now. We've been growing, but we're town now, right? And comics were very much not easy to find where I came from. And my mom, she's an undercover nerd. She's an undercover nerd. Both her and my grandmother are. They're kind of, they're nerds that you wouldn't expect, but once you get them excited about something, they're kind of there waiting with their money. They love Storms. They gave me a love for Storm. And we used to watch the X-Men cartoon a bunch when I was a kid. And, obviously, we started with that. Then we get like, BTAS comes up. We got Spider-Man, the animated series, like this whole, like, this beautiful, explosion of fun stuff I can watch with my parents. But, then it's like, when can I get my hands on these books? You know what I mean? Because there's no comic book shop in Ellick. There was like maybe one store, and like, the one store, especially back in the early aughts, might be some very tightly clothed women on the covers of those comics. My mom was probably not going to take me in that comic book shop. You know what I mean? Right. So it was her kind of figuring out, how can I get this boy some comics out of being weird? And it was the Marvel Monthly, the monthly subscription you could get, where you'd like at school, you get the little subscription card, you fill out what you want. I think maybe at the Scholastic Book Fair. And like, she saw that and she was like, oh, this is a done deal. I can get that shipped to the house. Easy. Right. So for her, it was getting me like Ultimate Spider-Man. That was like the first real book I ever got to read. And I did not understand just how like impactful of like a first book to really be getting month to month that was. And I used to read those books. I used to keep them up like on my little like bookshelf. I used to be really proud of them. And that was what comics was for a really long time. I would argue up until like college. So it was like TV, movies. Like I'm always seated whenever something pops up, but like I want to be wowed, right? And when I was a really small kid, I'd argue that static was definitely a big part of that. So when I got into college and I kind of realized just how big of like an impact Milestone had, I got to kind of read those books. And throughout college, it's hard to pay for books, kind of hard, college. But once I got done with college, I was like, okay, I got the big boy job, I got the big boy money. I can finally buy some books, right? And House and Powers of 10 were coming out, right? Jonathan Hickman. And like, I was an engineer, just finished graduating. I picked those books up and I saw those data pages. I was like, okay, I can get behind this. I like a graph, I can get behind these data pages. And not that much longer after that, we had the Milestone Return books come out. So all of them were in my box. I bought them week to week. I still got them in the little short box behind me. And that was when I kind of it kind of became real because I'd moved to a bigger city. I was going to signings. I got to meet Mitch Garrett's at one of those signings. I got to kind of ask him like, hey man, like, how do you do this? And he was like, just make a book. And I was like, is that easy? He's like, yeah, if you take it seriously. And I was like, I can do that. I've been known to try hard from time to time in my life. People have been known to tell me I'm no fun. Maybe I could be, maybe I could be that for this. And it kind of just birthed from there. And like, because Che was kind of already in my peripheral and I already kind of knew about his artwork from my Overwatch days, from back when I was in the esports community. I got to kind of make this connection that I probably would have never made otherwise. And because of that, we were kind of able to make magic.
Nice. And Che, I'll kind of ask you the same question, like just your sort of comic book origins, or I don't know. I feel like most people who are artists, have been artists since kids, right? And the beauty and magic in it is that they just never stopped. But I'm curious as to how much a role comics played in your artistic journey, and if it was the goal all along.
Honestly, I don't think it was. The main thing I grew up being inspired by was like cartoons. Like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood was, I think, the first really big thing that I was like, oh, like I want to like draw, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, that kind of thing. So at first I was like, animation, that's the path. But then I quickly realized, hey, maybe I don't want to spend a month to make 1 second of artwork move. Like, all props to the people that have the patience. I don't, even though comics are still really time consuming. But yeah, I don't know. I started with 1 and 2 animation. Over time, I slowly realized like, if I want to tell stories and get them pumped out and like get them in the hands of people, comics is kind of the way to go, And so it was stuff like a lot of image books, a lot of like Invincible and Saga and things like that, where I was really feeling drawn in, like this is a medium where I could really express myself. And then over time, I just more and more influences, different manga, some big superhero comics here and there. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of just bounced around and I did definitely start drawing as a kid though. Like that's always been the core of it for me. I wanted to find a medium where I could draw and write and tell stories, and just comics kind of allows me the freedom to do basically whatever I want, and I just, yeah, I don't know. I really like it as a medium. It's a lot of freedom while also giving you some interesting constraints where you have to problem solve and think about things that you might not necessarily have to if you're just doing illustration or, anything a little more picture focused. It's the story for me, I guess.
So with that, right, like the sort of jump from illustration to sequential art, what were maybe some of the harder lessons to learn, or did you feel like it was kind of a more natural fit for what you were inclined toward?
I wish I could say it was natural. That stuff is so hard, bro. There are so many little unexpected challenges with comic that you just don't think about. And I think a lot of upcoming artists don't necessarily think about when they're first learning. Like, a lesson I'm still drilling into my head is that you need to leave so much room for like word balloons. It feels like an afterthought, but it really affects the entire image, right? It's not just the device or the necessary evil you have to put in to make sure the dialogue gets told. It's part of the picture, it's part of the graphic design of each panel. So it's things like that. It's pacing out a page. It's planning for a page turn. It's when to use splash pages and working with the compression of a panel. That's something I've been really into lately, and looking at a lot of Frank Miller stuff, how he'll manipulate his drawings to use the edges of the panel interestingly. So yeah, I don't know. It's a fun like puzzle, I guess. It's definitely harder, I'd say, than just straight up illustration, because that is just like, if you can technically create a good image, you're going to succeed. But with comics, it's a combination of that and can you tell a story? You know, can you draw from a bunch of different perspectives? Can you make a talking head scene interesting? Can you do different environments and account for all these different things that you're not necessarily planning for if it's just a drawing or a painting for its own sake? So it's always a learning process, but it's a fun one. You know, once you solve those problems and the layout is like perfect, you're like, yeah, this is, you know, it feels like you're solving a puzzle on every page.
Nice. And I think problem solving is probably the sort of common denominator that would take somebody from, say, being an engineer into creative writing. Like, because for me, when I think of those professions, they couldn't be any further apart. Like, which, Mark, what kind of field of engineering are you in?
I was in biomedical. I was very much, I started out I started out comp sci. I then switched to chemie with like a bio focus. And I was like, okay, what are we doing? Just do biomedical. So then I switched over to biomedical. And my whole shtick was that I went to college to fight cancer, not countries. And that's kind of where my turn towards creative writing kind of went. I definitely was a kid who was like, you know, I wanted to be like a superhero when I was a kid. Obviously, I wanted to be like Spider-Man. I loved Spider-Man growing up. And I think I definitely chose a discipline that's very adjacent to what Pete kind of studies, just kind of off rip, right? I remember having a very similar conversation with that, like Pete had with Kirk Connors and like this, like the second Spider-Man, like the Raimi Spider-Man, where he's like, you know, you're invested, but you're just not all here, son. Like I remember having that with my OChem 2 professor. Like it was very like, I used to very much like try to be that type of kid, right? And it's because I thought that like, you know, maybe we could engineer some solutions to try and fix things out here. It seems like me and my brethren have been used to make things a lot worse. And it was me kind of wanting to go back to that place that was magical when I was a kid, that made me want to pursue these hard sciences that, you know, it feels as though it's outside of my grasp in the real world. Like, you know, I might not be able to make the superpowered person I need to be able to go and save everyone, but maybe I can offer my perspective in a book as a person who feels that way. Because there's plenty of other writers who did, you know, people like Dwayne McDuffie, you know what I mean? So plus also like, I was also very inspired when I found out that Stephanie Williams, you know, was a researcher, you know, clinical research. I was like, okay, so, you know, maybe I'm not crazy to think I could do this. You know, if one of the goats in the industry, you know, is out here doing it, why not? You know?
Yeah, no, it's honestly, it's kind of crazy to me, like how many people in comics have like a very similar story, right? Like Dwayne McDuffie famously was a physicist and, you know, found out his research was being used for nefarious purposes and just like was like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm going to film school, right? Like, and made his way into comics, right? Stephanie working on the electron microscope and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, I'll try my hand at some creative writing. Let's just do these X-Men memes and see where it goes, right? And, you know, again, I think it's fascinating to me because those things are far apart. The person that can operate the electron microscope, in my mind, is not the same person that can write Nubia for a year, you know? And so I'm curious as to like how you feel like it. Do you feel like it's a different part of your brain being stimulated or activated to write creatively versus doing some of the day-to-day work like of an engineer?
So I think that there's definitely some wearing different hats type aspect to it all. There's definitely some overlap. Don't get me wrong. I think there's definitely some overlap. I think when it comes to how to scale something that's like working up, that's something that I lean on, I would say, as an engineer. As I'd argue, some people say, oh, engineering's making stuff, or like, oh, you know how things work. I would argue engineer, the classical definition is, can you scale a product? Can you take one unit, figure out how to make this profitable for us to be able to ship it nationwide? And like, that's the part of it all that I lean on in the background, right? Because if you lean on that primarily, the book's not going to be very good. So I put that hat on last. I always make sure that once the book is done and like it's time for Kickstarter time, that's when engineer Mark starts to come out the woodwork, right? That's when he's got all these ideas for products. So he's 3D printing stuff because he's a weirdo. Like, you know what I mean? So for me, it's about making sure I wear the right hat at the right time. And my mom is an English teacher. I grew up with my mom correcting my grammar everywhere I went. Boy, that is a pen, not a pen. That was my mom growing up all the time. And I love her for that. She taught me how to talk. She taught me how to speak. And when I write, there's an effortlessness to it that I think that she ingrained in me because I got to have her by my side my entire childhood. And getting to have her be the person, my first English teacher, really helped me in that regard. So sometimes it is a bit hard for me to kind of, sometimes I'll think to myself, boy, what do you know about writing? And it's like, you know what your mama taught you. And you need to be confident in that because she's a really good teacher. And like, that's what I try to lean on, I think, is that despite the fact I didn't get to have my mom in a classroom, I had her every single day of my life in that living room, like on the way to school. And like that, I think, was class in another way. Sparring is still training, even if it's not in the dojo. So I think that that's where I try to lean on. But I also try to write what I know. I don't shy away from the fact that I know a lot of science I probably shouldn't know as a writer. So, I'm going to try and dig in the weeds a little bit. And whenever I dig too much, Chase says, okay, brother, you're out in the abyss. Come on back. We don't know what these words mean. And then we're suddenly good to go. We have something that feels right. And I can tell you whenever it's wrong. Because as a person who was in the science sector for a long time, there are some phlebotinum that I'm not a fan of in the science fiction space. I'm tired of nanites, man. I'm tired of nanites. Like, oh my goodness, I'm tired of nano machines and nanites. I'm tired of it. We can have some more fun than that. And I know some of the mad science. I know where they hid the ray gun. We can have some fun with this. You know what I mean? So it's about writing what you know and being able to take it to that place where there were these moments where it felt like the stuff I was studying was out of this world. Write about that. And make it fun. Make it fun. Don't just reflect the real world. Take it to another level.
Got you. So obviously you were familiar with Che from like esports and seeing illustrations that he had done before. What was it about his work where you were like, okay, I have this idea and maybe he's the perfect one for it?
So that's an amazing question. I think it was because the artwork that I saw from him before, it was for a web comic that was for the esports organization that we were both kind of exteriorly a part of. They kind of commissioned him to do a comic that kind of made a Fortnite skin for each person on the org. And each person was a streamer, a Twitch streamer. So they all had like their own type of persona, their own crowd. And it was like a battle royale of all of these different like skins. And the skins were all over the place as far as what the designs looked like, and like in a good way. Like we had anthropomorphic, we had realistic, we had like demonic, a whole bunch of cool stuff. And I got to see a lot of flexibility. Like I'm talking about like a dozen plus character models, and like seeing that type of flexibility and just knowing that he's just trying to make sure he gets these out quickly and make sure that he can like reproduce them and make sure they all look distinct and different. For the simplicity of it and the distinctiveness of it all, I could just tell that this was like an artist that knew what he was doing. And I personally I liked his artwork, because that's one thing. I'm a little bit picky. You could be very, very talented, but if I'm not a fan, I probably won't want to work with you. But if I want to work with you, I was probably a fan beforehand. Right. So I was very much a fan of Che's work because of that. And when I saw just how many different people he did, I knew it was like, oh no, you know what? I think he'd be perfect for this project, because we want to showcase just how non-monolithic Black culture is in that regard. Like as far as like we specifically with hair, we wanted to showcase so many different types of hair texture. And I knew that if he gave that type of, care to all of these different personas of, all these different creative styles, that he'd be able to give the attention to high top versus low fade versus, braids versus locks versus girl with the messy bun versus somebody wearing a bonnet, like all these different things. I knew he would actually know to take care of and know to make distinctive. And I don't even have to tell him. He just knows he knows what's up. And that's why I knew it. This guy, I wanted everyone at this school to look extremely unique. And he does unique really well.
Jay, so I feel like a lot of times with comic artists, it's just almost feels like an actor choosing a script, whether or not they want to audition for it or go out for the film. And I'm curious, it's like, what is it about a project that makes you want to commit to it, right? Because, I guess the best artists in the world are like a page a day, maybe, right? So it's like you're going to commit a whole lot of time and that's if you're just on pencils, to making one story come to life. So what is it about Scion that made you be like, all right, I'm gonna let's do this?
First of all, for the record, I did not know what I was doing on that webtoon, so I appreciate that. I was drowning on every page. But to your question, I think Scion felt it just felt right in a lot of ways. I don't know. The fact that it was set in HBCU and centered around black characters felt like a really cool, like fresh way to sort of break in and make more of a name for myself, right? Because that webtoon project was the only thing I'd really done up until then, right? I hadn't gotten to really do a more grounded story. I didn't know where my strengths were exactly. And so here comes Mark with a script where it's like, hey, I believe you're the right choice to draw this story where it's set in like the South and there's all these different black characters and there's supernatural elements and it like goes between grounded and mystery and drama and crime and supernatural. And I'm just like, this feels like me, this feels like a sandbox that I was meant to play in and a world where I feel like I have room to add my little like flares, I guess. Cause I think one of the things that I like about my own art, which I'm obviously very critical of it, like all artists are, but one of the things I like about what I do and what I pay attention to is like Mark was saying, the nuance between different characters. I'm not just focused on the big things, like what does their silhouette look like, and how do they, I don't know, look in a fight scene or something. I'm thinking like, how does this character gesture when they're talking to a friend? What accessories would they wear? How would they dress? That kind of thing. And I think the college setting especially kind of forces you to do that, because I could very easily have everyone just wearing like really basic clothes and all the dialogue scenes are just people standing around and not emoting. But I'm like, no, I want to add life to this. I want to make these characters feel real. And so I think that's a big thing for me with projects, is just like having room to add my own nuance and my own little touches, and to feel like the story would benefit and I would feel more satisfied if I put in more effort than was necessary, I guess. Because there's the bare minimum and then there's all the little stuff you can do that half the audience won't even notice, that makes things feel more alive, And I think that's really my bag. That's, even beyond Scion, I think that's what I want to do going forward, is stuff where it works on multiple levels like that. There's the big fun stuff and there's the small nuanced character interaction and, little design choices and things like that give it a little extra something.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like with a book being set at a school, especially an HBCU, right? Like It really does offer that opportunity for variance. Like I didn't go to HBCU. I went to we call them PWIs, right? But one of my favorite hobbies, at the time I was a rapper, but I would just sit, at my school we had a fountain, and I would just sit and just like people watch, like in front of the caf. And you would see so many different types of people, different outfits, different demeanors. And, for me, it was like I would make up stories about these people, and that would be like what my raps would be about. But it's just cool to see so many different types of people in one place, because I feel like that's unique to college life. Most everywhere else, it's like, all right, I'm in this blue collar neighborhood, I'm in this place, that place. So that's really cool. And it's something I didn't think about when I was reading the book, but you could certainly appreciate from it. Like I think reading Scion issue 1, I was kind of taken by it, and it made me wish a couple of things. The first was just like, okay, I want to go back and watch a different world, right? The second was like, man, like maybe I should have gone to an HBCU. Like this, there's something about this experience that I feel like I missed, right? But I think overall, I was just, after reading so many different indie comics, there's in mainstream as well. And when you read a debut issue of a comic, a lot of times it serves as the pilot. It's the book that's supposed to hook you if nothing else does. And a lot of times it's okay, let's throw as much action as possible and then make sure you're surprised by the end of it. And, I would take that. Let's say, like, I don't know, when I was a kid, the big premiere episode of a TV show would be a thing. Like, I remember when 100 Deeds of Eddie McDowd came on SNCC, right? Like, dang, am I old? Because nobody responded to that. That's crazy.
I'm just trying to think. Like, I'm just trying to make sure that SNCC is what I'm thinking it is.
So all right, SNCC was the Saturday night block on Nickelodeon.
Okay, so Nickelodeon. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Like all that and all that. Okay, for sure. Yeah,
all that.
So weird. Yeah, I got you.
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Not so weird though. Are You Afraid of the Dark? That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
all that.
So yeah, I remember that. Okay,
crazy. I'm old, but anyway. The point just being, it used to be an event, and I remember, like, you watch that first episode, and it would either hook you or it wouldn't. But like, I remember when Rocket Power. All right, this is now a tangent. I don't need to go on, but
no, Rocket Power bangs. I still remember Rocket Power. So that one, Rocket Power. Woogie. Yeah, Rocket Power more.
Ancient Hawaiian secret, but but I remember a lot of these like TV shows premiering, and it was like it's dope. But what Scion feels like is, I don't know if y'all ever watched a TV show where it was a 1 hour pilot instead of the 30 minutes. And so it was almost like a made for TV movie that you got to get you hooked in the series, and everything else would be like 30 minutes or whatever after the fact. But that's what Scion felt like. You guys built this world, set up all these characters, allowed them to live in the world for a little bit. And then you introduce the problem. And I thought that was just masterful, the way you did it.
Thank you. We really tried to figure out how long we wanted these issues to be. And we knew we wanted them to be longer than a standard 22 pager. Just because Che and I both agreed that we wanted this to feel like we want hour-long television, just like you said. We wanted it to feel like The Sopranos or like Breaking Bad, something that was something you were going to sit down with the family, and you were waiting for it like week after week. That's how we wanted it to feel. And to that note, we're continuing with that notion. Outside of just like, the hour-long intro, we want this to be what you get with each issue. I firmly do believe in what you're saying. Yes, sometimes with a 22 pager, it can sometimes feel hard to feel like you actually got to sit with the characters long enough to justify what maybe happened to them. And I wanted everything to feel earned. Like we both did. It was very important to us that things got to breathe with this, especially whenever it comes to, it's like they're college kids. You're going to have time between classes. Like, yes, life is hard and it's happening to them, but we didn't want it to feel as though it was overly dramatically happening to them. And especially because for the first two issues originally, both Scion 1 and Scion 2, the original draft was just one large, like 98 or 96 page, like epic. Like it was just like this one big, like, okay, how do we give this to them? Right. And we pretty much agreed that it was probably best to chunk this down, split it down to something that's a lot more feasible, and just see if 48 pages is, if it's too much or if it's just the right amount. And we're very, very glad to hear that it seems like it's something that people are receptive to.
All right. So I'd be remiss if I didn't like just stop real quick, because I'm going deep down this rabbit hole of Scion because I'm a fan of this book. But you should know that Scion issue 2 is live on Kickstarter right now. It's a 48-page full color comic, and it has funded. Issue 2's goal was just $2,000, and they've blown past that to the tune of like quadrupling it, just about. So if you want this book, go ahead and back it. You only have a couple of days left, but you're pretty much guaranteed to get it as we have hit goal. There's a dope variant cover by Nicholas Draper Ivy. Of course, Che did the A cover. And there's a lot to like here. All right, first off, let me ask you this. Naming the main character John Lewis, I'm assuming that was intentional.
Yes, it was. And not just, it's not as one-to-one as you might think. We weren't just like, you know what? Strong civil rights leader. That's the man he needs to be named after. No. So John Lewis, the John Lewis that is featured in Scion, that is a man I know in my real life. John is a real man. I went to college with John. And he is a very good man. He's kind of like this international man of mystery around campus back in South Louisiana. If you're from South Louisiana, you probably know about John, especially if you are in like the political space. Like if you do like community outreach, stuff like that, you definitely know John. And he was very kind enough to let me use his likeness for this story, because when I was kind of coming with the pitch for everything, you know, one of my early jokes I had for this story was that, you know, what if Dwayne Wayne from a different world was a spirit detective? That was like kind of like my early joke, right? And John, when back we were in school, man, John was like the spitting image of Dwayne as far as like, you know, haircut, glasses, tall, slender, but also just like in touch with like his like compassionate side. Like he knew how to talk to ladies, and it was one of like, and like not like in like a ladies man type way, like in a like, I'm here to be a person in your life you can rely on type way. And like, I knew that you could build a script around that. And me and John both agreed that there's a story to be told whenever you have a name that someone else really important had, especially in our community. You know, he used to tell a joke back in the day because he was in junior representatives back, because he's from Atlanta as well. He actually got to meet Representative Lewis back whenever he was still with us. And one of the jokes he made was, you know, hi, I'm John Lewis I'm representative from Atlanta. It's nice to meet you. And Representative Lewis looked at me and said, I'm Representative Lewis. It's nice to meet you. It was like this very fun reversal. And they kind of got to talk about the importance of a name. And I wanted that to be a very central thing here. I wanted everyone to kind of know that John is someone who is a little bit more than surface level. He's a little bit of an inside joke, if you will. And you're going to have to get to know him a little bit to really understand all the responsibility and the weight that's kind of on his shoulders. And I think we kind of get to unpack that a bit in issue 1, but we get to kind of further unpack it with his response to what happened to him in issue 1 and issue 2. So John, along with a lot of some other people, Willie's a person I know in my real life. So is Vincent. They're both real people. They let me use their likeness for this story, which is super incredible. I actually played football with Vincent back in the day, back when I was in high school. When I found out he was at Jackson State, I was like, oh no, this is happening. So it was really just this really personal kind of coming together of like, you know, kind of finding the story amongst what kind of happened in real life and figuring out how to, one, clean it up so it feels good for other people to look at. So it's not just good for you. But then also really kind of laying in the themes that kind of exist there. How much harder is it to sit through the large moments in civil rights history that are going to be continuing to happen to us as a community when you have the name of a civil rights leader? Everyone might be just kind of looking to you in the room when like, is that a fair burden? I don't know. I just have that man's name. So it was a question and a burden, like a yoke we wanted to put on our main character to see how he handles that responsibility.
Got you. So, of course, right, like you're talking about how you met different comic creators and you decided to kind of take a stab at creative writing. Why was Scion an important story to tell? Like, what was it about this? I don't. Sometimes I feel like people have like 4, 5, 6 ideas and like, okay, this is the one I'm going to go with. And other people just have like the one idea and it's like, I got to bring this to life and then I can see what else I'll do after that. Which one was it for you?
Definitely the latter. This is my first script ever. I was not a writer before this. My mom definitely kind of scared me away from this world because she was worried that after a life of being a teacher that, you know, I would maybe be, slave to the same wages that she was over life. So she definitely encouraged me to go be Mr. Spider-Man. Go be Mr. Spider-Man. Go get that engineering degree, right? My mom would tell everybody, oh, my son's going to be a biomedical engineer. She would say every syllable with like a thump in her chest. And when I told her I wanted to kind of write a comic book, I don't know if she got it. I'm going to be honest. Yeah. And it was me kind of knowing that I needed to tell this story, whether or not other people liked it, got it. I needed to tell it because it's a story of my salvation. I dropped out of college twice before I finished. And it wasn't because of grades. It was because I got sick the first time. And when I came back, I was worried I wouldn't have enough quality points to finish in time before I ran out of student loans because I was getting up to that $50K cap. So I had to really reevaluate what I was going to do with that last $12,000 that I had. Am I going to spend it on two semesters and hope I have enough to finish? Or am I going to go to a cheaper university and really try to lock in? And I chose the latter. I took 6 months off. Moved back home, and I moved to Jackson. And when I got to Jackson State, they were they built me up into someone who was confident enough to do what I'm doing right now, because I was not this man when I got to Jackson. And I wanted to tell that story. I wanted to tell this story about how Mississippi, the last state in the nation, the one that we all love to make fun of, was there with open arms to take me in and nourish me, truly a nourishing mother, my alma mater, into someone who could do this. I was not this man when I came to that university. And it's not because it's a good school. It's because I needed to go to an HBCU. I needed to go where they make Black engineers so I could be home while I'm trying to learn how to become something more than what I am. And they accomplished that for me. They kept me safe underneath their wing while I matured. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, someone else out there might be able to feel what I felt. Maybe they could be just feeling an ounce of the salvation I got from getting to go to Jackson State by just opening up this book and getting to hang out with the students at Gibbs Green for a little bit. I wanted everyone to know how much I was able to turn things around because I went to that school. And eventually a story naturally just kind of fell into place whenever I put those feelings behind it.
That's interesting. And maybe this next question is self-serving, but it's graduation season, right? So last year, my sister-in-law graduated from North Carolina A&T State University. I should finish the school's name, right?
Nice. Congratulations for sure.
Thank you. Last month, my mother-in-law went back to school for her biology degree from Fayetteville State University, and attending all these commencement exercises, right? Like you start to kind of pick up on the sort of community nature or the familial nature of the campus and how everybody's kind of got each other's back and stuff, right? I think when I was coming up, there was a lot of value put on the education. And I think looking back, being an adult, looking at, HBCU culture, I think what was lost on me, or perhaps not explained, is there seems to be a sort of incubator factor a lot of the time, where it's like, yeah, here's the book knowledge, but also here's a safe space for you to grow, and we're going to support you. We're going to ask questions. We're going to, make calls, like make connections and so on, so that you know how to use the education when you're done. And so, for people who may be considering whether or not an HBCU is worth it, a lot of times we see funding issues. I know when I applied, I applied to a bunch of schools. A&T was one of them. A&T was not my top choice. And I remember being turned off by the admissions process. So you call, check your status of your application or whatever. And I remember the lady, I'm like, yeah, my name's Brandon, here's my application number or whatever it was. She's like, oh yeah, you accepted. You should probably get your stuff later. And for whatever reason, that turned me off. Like there was no surprise. It could have been like, oh yeah, decision's been made. Just be on the lookout for it. And then when it just came in like a regular envelope, just stuffed full of papers. Whereas when, the PWIs that I applied to, one of them came in like this really nice envelope, like this sturdy packaging or whatever. Another one had like a little see-through window on the back. And all I'm talking about is the fact that, these schools had endowments or, more state resources or whatever, right? And so they were able to capitalize on that. But we hear about financial aid troubles and all these different administrative scenarios. And I think that scares people away. And I'm curious from the perspective of someone who attended, right? Like what you would say to sort of counteract the stigmas, if you will.
So the stigmas were definitely something that were alive, promulgated, and it had a lot of strength whenever we were, late high school going into college. Like there was definitely a 20-year period where you could not get a word out positive in a room full of people about an HBCU and pretty much be seen as someone credible or professional. And that was something that we had to fight back hard against. And it's something that I also dealt with, that difference in polish whenever it comes to how the college is able to present itself to potential students, to professors, to the world out wide. I also, when I got accepted into LSU from when I went to originally to undergrad, I remember I came home from like my homecoming football game. We just won. We came back from a 21 point deficit in the fourth quarter. We were not supposed to win. It was like a whole thing. Like it was like my 200-pound self was crowd surfing. It was insane. I came home, I see this humongous LSU, like you're a Tiger now, like, right. This whole like big, like love purple, live gold or something like some annoying old mess like that. And it was, it's an act, man. It's a gimmick. It's a gimmick. What I need folks to understand is that what you pay for in university is the networking potential. If you can afford and you are, privileged and smart enough to be able to get into one of these top universities that's Ivy League level or something like that, sure. If you can afford that and you can pay for it, go do that. Network with them folks. Take it very seriously, because if you don't take it seriously, you're wasting money. But I'm gonna be very frank here. 2 + 2 = 4 at every university. Doesn't matter if you went to a cheaper one. The laws of thermodynamics don't suddenly change because you decided to go to your local state school. And I think that that's something that we grew up with, the accepted generation. You're right. We all grew up with that movie, accepted. I rewatched it after kind of finishing college, and it was so dystopian to kind of realize just how much we were all afraid of just like disappointing our parents and like kind of ruining the guise of us being these perfect, smart, capable children. Right. And it's, the college experience that is waiting for you at a smaller, more close-knit university is still valuable. It is still a freshman year experience. You're still going to get to go to games. You're still going to get to tailgate. You're still going to get to fall in love. You're going to get to do all those things that 18 and 19-year-olds want to do. But you'll get to be at home if you do it at a PWI, and not your house, home. And your mama's not there. I promise. I kicked her out before you got here. like I promise. There's something, and we've tried to showcase that in Scion. I wanted things on campus are cool. It's cool. People can kind of tiptoe in and get away with some small stuff, but on campus, you got to watch your back. But the second you walk downtown to campus and off campus to go grab a cup of coffee, suddenly you're not safe anymore. And that's based off of my own experience. That was what I experienced in real life. And I would argue that in a PWI, it's the experience at Coffee Co. on campus, where you sleep, where you eat, where you go to class, and you will not get to be the Black intellectual that you deserve to be while you have a lot of these prying white supremacist opinions that can actively speak against you in these spaces, and then are armed with like the rhetoric to do so too. That's the crazy part. I remember going to some philosophy classes. I got a philosophy biology class. I dared to even reference the idea that maybe racism is an evolutionary construct. And everyone was like, well, maybe we shouldn't talk about race in a biology class today, guys. Maybe this is a good idea. It's like, this is a Phil class. What are you doing? We should be able to have a discussion. Why are you silencing me? I paid money to be here. And that's something you got to remember here. This isn't high school, fam. This isn't public school. You're paying for this. Pay to become the professional you deserve to be. Don't spend 4 to 5 to 6 years at a school where you know they're not going to let you actually be the intellectual you need to be. You should be able to put your hand up and talk wild in class. You paid for it. I know it sounds crazy, but you should be able to talk hot in class. That's why you paid for it.
You absolutely did pay to be there. It's funny that the more I look back on my collegiate experience, I do feel like it was a little bit insulated. I don't know that I have the full on story. One, I went to a smaller state school that was originally a women's college. They opened it up to co-ed, I want to say sometime in the 60s or whatever. But we still didn't have a football team. Sports were not big, whatever. But all that to say, I ended up in the African American Studies department, and then I ended up being president of NAACP. So it's my experience was Black, though the school was not. And then we would have these reminders every now and then. I was in college when Obama was elected the first time. And that night was crazy. They had a big watch party in the student union. And then as soon as they were oh, CNN projects Barack Obama's a winner, everybody just rushed outside. It's raining. People playing Young Jeezy. Women, white women are in the fountain. It's what is happening right now? It was just pandemonium. And we went from like this crazy state of like elation and ecstasy. And then I'm walking to my dorm, which I had to walk past the caf to get to where I was staying. And I got stopped by a few cops. And they were like, I fit the description of someone who beat up an RA from some other dorm. And I didn't even have my ID on me, because the only reason I was even outside was because the our RA was clearly a Republican. Like, and so when they started projecting different states, he got mad and was like, everybody go outside or whatever. So anyway, when I left, I didn't bring my ID or anything like that. All I have is my lanyard that says that I go to the school and my key to the dorm. And the cops stopped me, and it's like, and they stopped me and like 4 other dudes, but we were not together. They were just a few steps ahead of me. They stopped all of us. It's like, let me see your ID, da, da, da. And I was like, I'm really getting profiled right now. Like my dorm, they're like, where'd you come from? Like right there, like there. And I was like, yo, this is wild. And that was not the first time I had a crazy experience with campus police. And it's like, it's stuff like that I'm sure does not happen. It didn't happen down the street at A&T. I'll say that, at least not in that way. So I do think there is something about being in those formative years, because I think 17, 18, 19, you think you're grown, right? But you're not. You're not. Nobody wants to hear that they're not. But my point is just that there's so much maturing and developing that happens in those 4, 5, 6 years that you are there. And I think those are some of the most crucial. I have seen people go from crazy, like wilding out frat boys to working professionals, doctors, dentists, lawyers, right? But I also saw some people go from like wide-eyed look at campus life into, I didn't take advantage of it. Now I'm working super blue collar and may or may not be doing illegal things to get by. Right. And so it's like that time, I feel like you need as much support as possible. And so for young Black folks, I do think an HBCU is probably the best route to that, especially in this climate.
I agree. We're also in a new era now where like HBCUs are getting more funding. We're still not at the level of what a PWI might be, but schools like Jackson State, like Morgan State, like obviously like Howard's got everything. But Florida, FAMU, all of these schools have full engineering programs, full science suites. Like they actually have the labs now to be able to offer these degrees that back when I went to school, I wanted to choose engineering. There wasn't really a school outside of Howard at the time back in 2013 that really had a full program. At least that was what I wanted to do. So by the time, let some time go past, suddenly Jackson State has this brand new program that I can take a part in. Okay, yeah, let's be one of the first graduates in this program and like get this thing done. And like it's going to be what you make it. I had a professor who told me that, because I remember in my professionalism class, we had a professor who had worked in industry for about 20 years, and he came back to come teach at Jackson State, pretty much to just kind of like let the youngins know what it's like on the inside. And I remember me and my friend Sinefra, we asked him, we were like, man, can we get like the jobs that like the PWI engineers can get, man? Are we just like kind of like, are we SOL, bro? And like, he was like, no, dude, you can get a good job if you work hard. It's the same answer that Mitch Garrett's gave me. Like, oh no, it's real if you're serious about it. And like, that's when I knew to lock in with comics, because when I heard Mitch pretty much tell me the same thing I heard in that classroom from them, I was like, oh, okay, so this is it. This is what he was talking about. Like, this is that moment. It might not be, Google campus. It might not be Apple at Cupertino. Like you might think when you're like small town little boy in the South, you just want to get out of the South, big job, move you to the big city. It's real now. What is it going to be? And I wouldn't have had any of those opportunities if it hadn't have been for what I learned on an HBCU campus. And there isn't this humongous gap anymore in what can be offered. So go and enjoy that. We're in a renaissance right now. Enjoy it while we have those resources, because things could change.
Facts. Very much could. Che, I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you, right? Like, because you talked about what drew you to the story of Scion and wanting to participate in this project. Without spoiling anything, what were some things that you were excited that you got to draw and lay out in issue 2?
Oh man, in issue 2. I mean, there's a lot that goes on that I can't really speak much on, but the main thing is that we're getting more into the supernatural stuff while we're still spending a lot of time with these characters and getting to know them. I don't know, like you were saying, issue 1 kind of feels like the pilot where we're just like getting a taste of what the story is and the vibe and, you know, why people should come along for the ride. And then issue 2 is like the ride's fully starting, and it kicks off in a way that's really exciting. I actually got to, this is kind of a spoiler, honestly, but there's just a little pinch of a horror aspect to it, which I think people may or may not expect. And it's just like the tone switch is just really fun to play with, I think. And these characters are uniquely qualified to like be in the situation, be fun to follow, right? Because I think a lot of stories, you're dealing with kids or high schoolers, right? If you're dealing with any kind of fantasy, you will be hard pressed to find a protagonist that's above like 16 or 18. But, in Scion, we're mostly dealing with like 20-ish-year-olds, 21. And so they can still be like scared and overwhelmed and out of their heads. But at the same time, they're like, there's a certain maturity to how they handle things. And like, when they're faced with these crazy circumstances, they're like, okay, this is wild, but also let me calm down. Let me figure out how to go into problem solving mode, And so I don't know. I think that's another big thing that I like about it and that I've liked about drawing issue 2 is like the moment to moment consequence of things makes a lot of sense. Like when I was reading the script, I was seeing it in my head because I'm just like, this is playing out, like you're saying, kind of like an HBO show. Like, I don't know. It's really hard to talk about without getting to specifics, but we're getting deeper into all the aspects that we were teasing and also seeing the way these characters are handling the situation and illustrating that has been really just fun, to play around with that and make decisions about how is John going to handle the fact that, he's trying to make it to like the big game, but also he's dealing with his eyes being, well, can't say that, but he's dealing with a lot of stuff. How to deal with it? How does Danita react? We also get to see a lot more of her, which is really fun. Get to see her shine in sort of her doctoral role. I don't know. There's a lot of fun stuff in issue 2. I think people are going to really dig it, and it feels like there's a bit of a wait, but it feels worth it because number one, the quality in art jumps a lot because I just take a lot of time to practice between issues because I want everything to feel like its own event and like it's been worth the wait. But also just the continuation of the story in general. The pacing is great. I think people are going to dig it.
That's funny. You kind of jumped right on my next question, which is, how do each of you feel that you have grown in your skill or storytelling ability from issue 1 to now?
I cannot stress enough how scared I was going into issue 1. Honestly, I had done a webtoon that was cool, and then Mark was like, "Hey, you want to do a 48-page graphic novel?" I'm like, "I guess, bro." And I'm glad I took it, but it was scary for sure. I mean, even the layout of the literal page dimensions is completely different, right? A vertical scroll versus a horizontally flipping book is a completely different reading experience that you have to account for. But yeah, like I was saying, I don't take any of this art stuff lightly at all. I don't believe in taking shortcuts or getting it done just to get it done. Obviously, there's parts where you need to make compromises because this is comics and you're not trying to make people wait 3 years for every issue of a story, right? Because they'll lose interest. But I give things the proper time. If I release 2 issues of a graphic novel, I want there to be a very noticeable difference in the drawing skill and the attention to detail and the backgrounds, especially. I'm very big on backgrounds right now. It's like, I think the biggest thing in terms of what I've literally improved on in drawing is just like my perspective and my ability to make a scene feel real, because it's not the glamorous part of it, right? I didn't get into comics because I wanted to draw buildings in 3-point perspective, but it's what makes it sing. Like, you think about all the best looking comics, you think about stuff like Akira and Mobius's work and Ryan Otley's work and things like that. And the backgrounds and nuance is what really makes it special. The ability to take these characters, which, you spend a ton of your time drawing characters and sketching them, and put them in a scene and make them do interesting things and have the camera follow them and surprise the audience with the shots you're selecting and how you're choosing to stylize certain things. Kind of lost my train of thought, but suffice it to say, I practice a lot between issues, because I think if I'm going to take the time to tell a story and it's going to exist forever, I want to do it as well as I possibly can at that given moment. And then I want to be able to look back a few months later when I'm doing the next issue and say, that was terrible. I would never draw that page like that anymore, because I've grown so much. So always reaching for new heights.
Nice. Nah, it shows. I'm just looking at the preview pages from the campaign, right? Like, I appreciate that there are backgrounds at all. There's so many books that we see now, and it's just like, all right, let's just do a little cross hatching in the back, just to separate the foreground from the background, and that's it. Like, but
cross hatching a little gradient. I'm like, no, bro, I want to draw the door frame. Like we're doing it.
Right. Nah, it is. It really does make a world of difference. But Mark, I'm curious. I'll pose the same question to you. How do you feel you've grown as a writer from issue 1 to now?
I've grown immensely. I've gotten to write a lot, both rewrites to scripts within Scion. I've gotten to write up through issue 7 before I went back and did rewrites to issue 2. So that really helped. I've written I have some pitches and stuff on the side that I'm kind of cooking up right now. Still got to find artists, but we did a lot of writing on the side, lots of just like spitball stuff I thought would be cool. I kind of wanted to just pump out. So I got to spend a couple years just kind of getting to like wet my whistle and just do stuff, like me being like, hey, I know how to do this now. Let's just write. And after putting out like probably about like 20 or 30 scripts that way, I kind of got to come back now to Scion issue 2. And like now what, like with issue 1, maybe would have taken like 20, 30 passes on edits. I can probably get done in about like 4 or 5. And like, that feels good. It feels a lot better. It feels good to notice the mistakes a lot faster now and to clean them all in mass. And I have a better understanding of like what I want my style to be. I'm definitely developing my own personal style, especially when it comes to bolding and like in italicizing. I'm very, very, very specific when it comes to that. I love lowercase. I love lowercase so much, or at least like mixed case. Excuse me. I love mixed case font instead of uppercases. Uppercases are great; they have their place. But I fell in love with Hickman books, man. I love that. I love that mixed case. You know what I mean? So you can do a lot with it. When you have the ability to go into all caps for moments, you can further embellish that style, right? So figuring out how the script speaks to me and what my particular signature for writing for something needs to look like, all of that, it's just a lot tighter, a lot better. And I'm also just a lot more knowledgeable on how to like get a script like beaten into shape to the point to where I can give it to my letterer. So because I remember the first time I sent the letters, like the draft for letters over to DC and Darren over at at Anworld. I felt a little bit rough for having, I could have filed off a little bit more of a rough edge before I sent that into him. So learning all of those things, right? It's made me a lot more of a consistent and I think more cohesive writer. And I think you can see that in Scion. Like at least for the second issue, Che and I specifically from the original second issue draft that we had, that was 48 pages. I trimmed that down once I went back to where it was time to go into drafting for this one. I think we trimmed it down a full 4 pages so that way we could add in another scene at the end. And like the scene was completely new, was not there before, and like we both agree that it definitely needed to be there. So being able to kind of do things like that, now we're having surgery with the scripts that we've kind of written in the past, and we can kind of do work on them that we've already done before. So having that kind of I have some meat in the butcher shop that I can kind of work with now, if that makes sense. So it's been nice to kind of have a little bit of fat to cut off, a little bit of like to work with too. So I've been getting better, getting more creative, having more ideas. And I think that that's all been helping me, because anytime I get to go and write something else, I can come back to Scion and give that experience to it now.
Nice. Well, fellas, I want to congratulate you, one, on just the success of your project, not the monetary success and funding the Kickstarter, although that's impressive, right? But just to have an idea and to bring it to life the way you have, to be as effective in your storytelling, even as it is, in many ways your first at bat. You've made something compelling, and it's resonating with people. At the very least, it's resonated with me. But I know I'm not the only one, because y'all are killing it out here. So congratulations on that. To you, the audience, I just want to let you know, like I said, as I'm recording this, there's like 4 days left on this campaign, which means I have to figure out how I'm going to edit this before I get on the road, or it'll be too late when you see this. But I want you to go to the link in the description so that you can pick up this book. You reserve your copy. You can get the A cover by Che. You can get the Nicholas Draper Ivy variant. You can get a catch-up pack, as in catch up on the book, not food. That was bad. But you can get T-shirts, bookmarks. There's all sorts of goodies. I'm partial to the metal cover, but that's just because I have one, and I know how beautiful it is in person. So there's a lot that you can grab. Go to the Kickstarter. Links are in the description. But before I let you guys go, we're living in a moment right now. It feels like there is a hunger for Black stories, right? And we're seeing that hunger play out on like social campaigns, aimed at the mainstream. But there's also this groundswell of people like, well, who's telling the stories we need to hear, like, or need to see right now? And Mark, you put up a post kind of just talking about living in that line between the two, right? Like why you're fighting for these stories now, but you also feel, feel a need for there to be greater representation on the mainstream as well. And I'm curious, like, just to how maybe just kind of sort of restate your point there, just for our audience to kind of hear your heart on that. But I even beyond just kind of your feelings on that subject, I'm curious as to how each of you thinks of the sort of representation conversation and how that impacts the work that you're doing.
No, so I thank you for the question. I welcome it. It's a hard line to walk, because it feels a bit like a catch-22. If we were able to snap our fingers and make better representation at larger presses, I might not need to exist in the capacity that I currently do. But it might be one of those situations where maybe, cosmically, maybe that'd be not the worst thing. Maybe it's not the worst thing if you didn't know who I was, because, we're able to get ongoings for a lot of our favorite Black characters and have them constantly in front of us, have merchandise available to be able to buy all that stuff. But because we don't live in that world, right? I do my best to try and figure out how to fill in these spaces and be the glue that can kind of hold things together for the folks who are living through right now. One of the big moments I think that I personally kind of saw during the recent revelations that have been kind of going on within Black indie and within Black comics as a whole was just how much time kind of goes on sometimes between Black ongoings at larger presses. And specifically, I think I referenced an 8-year gap that specifically was my childhood. It was specifically those early aughts. And I specifically mentioned that if I hadn't have probably had Static Shock on the TV at that time, it probably would have been worse for me, because I didn't have the best understanding of what a black superhero could be. I didn't have a lot of representation on the TV screen, and I didn't really know if we could be black superheroes because I didn't see us on the screen enough. And luckily that changed for me, and I was able to understand and really grow and understand just how my feet can raise up off the ground and I can be superhuman. But it took those superheroes. It took me having Static. You know what I mean? One of the coolest logos of all time. You feel me? Like, and no toys. Virgil did it with no toys virtually. I want kids to have that. I want kids to be able to go to Walmart and say, "Mommy, I want that. Like, I want that superhero shirt, and it has a black superhero's logo on it." And while I'm building myself up every day to be able to give you just that, I'm but a small lad right now. I'm but a small press, and there are folks who are out here right now able to give what I think we might need, and I do understand that if that were the case, maybe I don't exist in that hierarchy, but I think that I did this so that black kids and black people could have comic books and superheroes to look up to. And while my superheroes, me and Chase superheroes, they don't wear capes. They're definitely looking to be heroes within their community. And I'm glad that I'm able to fill that gap. But I would love for the gaps to be not so wide. I'd love for my hands not to have to stretch so far sometimes to be able to feel like I'm having an impact.
That's real. What about you, Jay?
This question is kind of where my more radical side comes out, I feel, because I 100%, first of all, 100% agree. I think seeing black people as superheroes and seeing that kind of representation on a mass scale like that is just so important, especially for kids. Like, I mean, think back to when Black Panther came out, right? Seeing little black kids staring at the TVs going, look, we can be superheroes too. It was beautiful. Like, there were some of those videos that were damn near making me cry. But at the same time, like, I really believe in the independent and the creator-owned spaces. We are truly making waves out here in a way that I think people underestimate, right? Like what we're capable of. People like, Stephanie Williams and Rodney Barnes and me and Mark and a million others that I can't think of off the top of my head. Like, we're really out here doing the thing. And it might not be on as massive of a scale as like a Marvel or a DC, but I don't necessarily concern myself with mass scale all the time, I guess. Like, even with my social media, if I post a video, my metric is like, if I gain a single follower, that video is a success. Even if it gets 50 views, just one person feeling like, hey, this resonated with me, I'm going to stay along for the ride. Like, that's plenty for me. Right. And so I think that people need to support independent books and creator owned books and the black creators that are already out here, giving us the representation they need, because the more power people like us have, the more that can trickle up to these bigger spaces. Right. People, if me and Mark get hired to do a Marvel book, then, maybe you are getting that Black Panther ongoing, that kind of thing. And there's tons of projects out there. Like, there's this Kickstarter right now called Fly, I believe, for like an
yeah.
It
looks awesome.
It does. This dude, he posted on Instagram, I saw it, and he was essentially recounting the story of how he was a child and he had gotten, like, the cops called on him for doing nothing wrong, classic horrible stuff we see. And so he got out of that situation, but he was thinking about all the black kids that don't get out of those situations, right? And so he made this project called Fly. So, he can give wings to little black kids that never had them, that kind of thing. And I think stuff like that is just beautiful, and you're not necessarily going to see that from these larger press places where they're, at the end of the day, mostly focused on just making entertainment for entertainment's sake. Like, So yeah, support independent stuff, support creator owned, power to the people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Just to prove you right, I'm gonna spotlight myself for a second. I'm gonna show you guys this. This is my sealed copy. I have an unsealed one, so I won't open this now. But this is a book called Terminus Veil. Shout out to Jack Harris, who created this whole thing. But the art team on this book is Delio Diaz, and I don't know why I try to name people when I don't see their names anywhere. The point, though, is that the artists responsible for this image and like the last 2 issues in this book, they picked up the full creative team, and that is who is drawing Avengers Armageddon, Marvel's big event that just started this week.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, it is awesome. Like, okay, there we go. Oh, Alpizar. Is the inker's name.
Gotcha.
But it's like,
That's incredible.
It's incredible for them. And it's I don't know, it's validating because it's like, that means that someone is paying attention, right? Like, even with Murewa, who did Storm, right? He and Doten, who they had been partners, collaborators before. They entered Marvel together to do that Iron Man story, right? Like, so it's like people are paying attention to these stories that we are telling. I don't want the result of it to be just let's poach that talent. I want the takeaway from this to be like, oh wow, these stories are really important. Maybe our line should look like this, not just be penciled like this, but have these characteristics. So hopefully we move past poaching creative teams and we get there. But it is, validating. It is encouraging to see that, for as much as it feels like the sort of convention circuit, crowdfunded comics are in an entirely different industry, they're not. There are people in high places, if you want to call them that are paying attention, that they're in the know. So we keep beating this drum long enough, they're not going to be able to ignore it.
Exactly. There's definitely a difficult little gray area where it's like, yeah, so glad these people got this opportunity, but also it's like, are they going to get sucked into the machine kind of thing? But yeah, like you were saying, I think we just keep knocking on their door loud enough, they're going to have to hear us. And if they don't hear us, you build a new door kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think we should ever put our full stock into a corporation to, look out for our best interests. Like, because they don't. It's not possible, right? Good work can come out of these places, and there are good people that work for these companies. But at the end of the day, I'm focused on the individuals, right? If there is one Black person that reads my book and feels seen or heard or whatever, then I could literally die happy. Anything else is a bonus. So I try to stay focused on the individual level, but seeing representation on higher levels is also great.
For sure. Well, with that, I think that's a good note to leave this conversation on. Once again, gentlemen, I want to say congratulations for a successful campaign, but also just bringing your ideas to life. I know it's not easy. I know we all balancing day jobs and families and responsibilities. And a lot of times this stuff that we're doing right now feels like, playing on company time. And sometimes you can feel guilty, right? But I'm excited that you guys are doing the work and seeing the rewards. So with that, make sure you visit the link in the description so that you can get your hands on Scion issues 1 and 2 in case you missed out on the full story, plus a bunch of extra goodies, posters, t-shirts, and more. And I will see you guys in another one real soon. Until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today.